Hey guys, how's it going? Kermode here, back with another tutorial. In this video, I want to give you guys 10 tips that you need to know for phase plant. Before we get into the video, I do want to say if you haven't subscribed, please do. It helps out more than you know, and even consider sharing the video. That really helps the channel out. That being said, I don't want to waste any more of your time. Let's just dive right into it. So the first tip is if you want to copy and paste something inside of phase plant, it's quite easy. All you do is you take anything you want and you hold Alt when you click it and you drag, and you notice it'll make an exact duplicate. This goes for modulators, this goes for effects, and effects you can even drop into other lanes. This goes for individual things within a group, or this even goes as far as entire groups you can go ahead and duplicate. So this is really useful. This is one of the first things you need to know to speed up your workflow inside of phase plant. Next up, another key command you guys need to know is if you hold Command on Mac or Control on PC, it allows you to actually add a device above another device. Phase plant overall works top down and usually encourages you where if you want to add something in, it has to be at the bottom of the chain, but that's not actually true. If you hold Command, it'll allow you to insert devices above other ones, allowing you to circumvent that top-down order and, add different workflows into things as you desire. Next up, a fun one for sound design is the ability to actually randomize settings within devices. This is just a really fun way where when you've created a patch and you want to mix things up, you just hit random and you see how it gives you a different sound. So this can be really fun to just take an effect, especially one that's integral to the sound, switch it up and see what happens. It's a really good thing for sound design. Next up is the ability to move parameters incrementally. So one example of this where I find this super handy is when I'm dealing with frames and I'm trying to land somewhere specific. Sometimes, I find moving my mouse is a little too quick and too fluid, and I want to get a bit more specific. So if I suddenly hold down Shift, check out what happens. So I'm moving this regularly with my mouse, and now I engage Shift. Look at that, really slowed things down. So now you get a lot more precise with the placement of parameters. This is just really useful if you're trying to get ultra specific, you're trying to get a very specific harmonic, you hold Shift, and it kind of just slows things down so you have a bit more of accurate movement when dealing with parameters. Next up, a really useful one is the wavetable section here actually has a search bar, and I find this really useful where, for example, I want to introduce another wavetable somewhere else and I want to use this same wavetable specifically. So I insert it here, I insert wavetable. Okay, I know I want to use filter FM1. I don't remember what folder it's in, so what I do is I search filter FM1, searching, boom, right there, ready to go. We have the same wavetable. Next up is the ability to double click to reset things. Now double clicking has two different functions. So one, it can reset the position of a parameter to its starting point. So wherever it originally is by default, you just double click and it goes to where it was supposed to be from the beginning. Or additionally, you have the option to double click to reset a modulator. So you can take a modulator that's modulating a certain point. If you no longer want it to modulate that point, such as this one right here, double click and it'll actually remove that modulation source. Next up is the ability to solo and mute specific lanes. I think this is something people don't do enough, and it's a really good way to see how each lane is affecting something, so you can decide, if you need to change the mix on it, if you need to change the routing. So for example, let's solo lane 2. So we see we're getting a really nice mono signal from that. Let's solo lane 1. Okay, that's where I'm getting a lot of that filter movement. Let's solo lane 3. And actually you'll notice you run into a problem. You can't hear lane 3 because lane 3 is subject to the signal from lane 1 and 2. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind. But what we can do is we can mute certain lanes, or we can even turn them off entirely. is just a really nice way when working on lanes to hear what's doing what, or to work specifically on a certain lane where maybe because lane 1 and 2 here are going into 3, I can't hear what's going on in each one specifically right now, and I want something more interesting on lane 1. So maybe I solo it, then I add a filter movement in here. And there I got better context on what I was working on. Next up is modulating a modular's modulation amount. So what I mean by that is, for example, in this patch here, we have this LFO down here doing a lot of the movement, and I want to limit that, and I want to control that with a macro. So what I can do is I can take a macro and notice that certain parameters have little yellow stars under them. So what that means is once I add that here, what that means is this macro is controlling the range. See how this range here, and I'll do it here as well. These two ranges, and actually let's do it to this one as well. These two ranges aren't moving, but now when I move this macro, you can see those wavetable positions moving. So no movement, movement. Another example, we could drag this macro here onto the gain value. Now we'll really hear it. Where if this is down, so this allows you to control mod depth with another modulator. Another thing you can do if you want to get even more specific with values, you can actually right-click parameters, and that actually lets you type in a value. So if you don't want to click and drag, you don't want to hold shift like that earlier suggestion, you can even right-click and type in something specific. And this goes the same for LFO amounts and any additional modulator amounts. And then lastly, I don't know if this is necessarily a tip, but this is something I think people should know just for fun, is that phase plant, if you go into the top right corner here and you see this cool little symbol and you click it, it actually opens up Phase Invaders, which is their little version of Space Invaders, spacebar to shoot, and the arrow keys to move. So if ever you get bored and you can't think of some sound design, hell, maybe you can just play some Phase Invaders. So there we go, everyone. That was 10 phase plant tips that I think you guys need to know to improve your workflow inside of phase plant. If you like the video, please consider subscribing. Please consider sharing it around. It really helps the channel more than you know. And my name's Kermode, and I'll be back soon with another tutorial. Peace.